Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. It is Sunday, June 4th, before Game 2 of the NBA Finals between the Denver Nuggets, who won Game 1 big, and the Miami Heat. Let's talk about it. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, let me just say, it's my own personal preference. I like to be on both sides of the play. By the time we get to something like an NBA Finals after a long NBA season, I'm hoping to have futures on both sides. Right? The overwhelming favorite I'm hoping to have picked up months before, so I got a good line. Right? The challenger, no matter how much of a long shot, I want to make sure that I have prepared for a rainy day before tip-off of Game 1. Now, this year I wasn't able to do so. The Miami Heat were the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. They had to play the 1 seed, a team I was expecting big things from in the playoffs, the Milwaukee Bucks, a team that recently won an NBA championship. Right then, of course, if they were lucky and were able to win that series and win other series, they would ultimately have to play the winner of Boston, Philly. And I thought they were going to be in trouble either way you slice the cake. Well, of course, they jumped out to a 3-0 lead on Boston. I got pretty good odds after Game 4, after Boston had won Game 4. Got pretty good odds. Came online, said, hey, I'm going to play Boston here to win the Eastern Conference. Right? In fact, Boston to win the whole thing was part of the play because Boston would have had home court advantage in the NBA Finals, even though they were the lower seed against Denver because they had the better record. Right? And my hedge privately wasn't to take the Heat to win it all. Rather, it was to take Jimmy Butler to win MVP of the Finals. In other words, my main bet was Boston. I was hoping Boston came out of the East. Let me be clear there. But then my secondary bet was, I already have a bet on Denver. I think Denver is the better team than Miami. But this casino is offering me long odds on Jimmy Butler to be MVP. Who else could the MVP possibly be? On the Miami Heat. Right? I know a lot of people were taking Caleb Martin. Right? 3 points in Game 1. So I put down money on Jimmy. Now you can imagine how horrified I am right now. Game 1 rolled out, as I've been saying here for a while. There's an open question on whether any team can beat Denver in Denver in this postseason. Right? And Denver, of course, just swept the Lakers. Denver took care of business in Game 1, didn't play particularly well. Right? Didn't get to 105 points, and yet won the game. Right? But understand how naked and exposed I feel. The star of Game 1 for the Miami Heat wasn't Jimmy Butler, who only ended up with 13 points. Right? It was actually Bam Adebayo. Right? 26 points, 13 boards. Right? So I'm nervous going into Game 2. I'll just be blunt here. I'm nervous because worst case scenario for me would be Miami wins Game 2. Bam continues to put up points and rebounds, right? Even though Joker got a triple-double in Game 1, he didn't shoot the ball as much as he normally does. I could see voters thinking, hey, Bam slowed down his shooting. Right? My big fear is Miami coming back in these playoffs. And understand their prior playoff series, at the end of 2 games, they always had at least 1 win. on the road because they were the 8th seed, starting each series on the road. So game 2 scares me. But here's why I'm taking Denver in game 2. With regard to the line, I think the line is too wide. So on the alternative line options, have taken the lowest option I could get. I believe that was Denver laying 6 or 6.5 points. Right? You want to cut the line a little bit. But understand, the box score for game 1 is scary. The media, they're telling you, hey, Denver didn't shoot the ball well from 3. And Denver's a great 3-point shooting team. Right? They're pointing out that Denver shot less than 30% from 3. Right? What I want people to do is to look at Denver's overall shooting percentage numbers. Denver may have shot less than 30% from 3 for the game, including that less than 30% from 3. Denver hit better than 50% of their shots. In other words, folks, Miami has no clue how to stop Denver from 2-point range. None whatsoever. Also understand, Bam, 13 boards, that's a lot. But yet, Denver out-rebounded the Miami Heat. That Boston series, I'll tell you, Jimmy Butler was a big thorn in Boston's side. But if you look at his points per game, folks, it's sloping downward. Caleb Martin was a big thorn in Boston's side. One of the secrets to this series is the fact that Michael Malone, the head coach of the Denver Nuggets, is actually one of the better head coaches in the National Basketball Association. Right? Joker is known now. Understand, when he was unknown, Joker led Denver to something like the second best record in the Western Conference years ago, before Jamal Murray blew out his knee. Right? Let's talk about Jamal Murray. Understand, a few years ago, in the playoffs, Jamal Murray put up monster numbers. Folks, the talent is here. The coaching is here. Let's not be surprised or shocked that 2 of the thorns in Boston's side, Jimmy Butler and Caleb Martin, right? Caleb Martin, outrageous shooting percentage in that Boston series. Both of them got stopped in game 1. Butler held to less than 15. Right? Martin held to 3 points. The Miami Heat, on a day when Bama Adebayo had 26 points, and Spoelstra is a future Hall of Fame head coach. Right? But understand, you got as much from Bam in game 1 as you could. And Miami still ended up with less than 100 points. So I am expecting the Denver Nuggets to win game 2. I do like Denver laying around 6.5 points. Right? Let's say laying 7 or less. Denver's hungry. I know normally we look at teams and we say they've won a few in a row. The more games you win in a row, past the first few, the greater the chances are that you lose focus, that you start to believe the headlines, that you start to believe that you no longer have to prepare thoroughly. Right? But the dynamic here is a bit different. We know that they jobbed Joker. That's what it was. It was one of the worst jobs I've ever seen. They jobbed Joker out of not only the MVP, and understand, he would have been on the same plane in terms of winning 3 MVPs in a row as legendary NBA names. Bill Russell, right? Mr. 11 rings. Wilt Chamberlain, the statistical god of the sport. And of course, Larry Joe Bird. right? In a year where Joker should have won the MVP, they jobbed him, but it's worse than that. First team All-NBA. They jobbed him there too. Right, folks? I know I haven't seen a center average as many assists a game as Joker did this last year. Right? The only historical analogy to him is Wilt Chamberlain in the late 60s when Chamberlain was on his way to winning 3 MVPs in a row. Chamberlain one year led the league in assists with something like 8.6 assists a game, which was outsized, which was outrageous for the era as Wilt was. Right? Understand, Joker's last year is historical. In terms of rebounds, understand he out-rebounded Joel Embiid per game. Right? I believe there's a dynamic, and it's a silent one, with the Denver Nuggets because the team's a bit corporate, where they saw their ace get dissed, where they know that for all the great Nuggets in history, right? David Thompson, the Skywalker, Dan Issel, countless others, Carmelo. For all the great Nuggets in history, this team has never won an NBA title, right? Some guy named Julius Erving in the ABA. When Denver got to the ABA championship, the last time they got to the championship, beat them. Right? So you right now have new city intensity. Joker was dissed. Everyone on the team knows he's the best center in the league. I don't care what the commentators have to say. I watch enough ball. I mean, I don't need to hear some excuse on why Joel Embiid, a nice guy, should have won MVP. Just like I don't need to hear about how Karl Malone one year, where Jordan dominated, where we knew who the best player in the NBA was, where you couldn't imagine the Bulls without Jordan. They gave the MVP to Karl Malone, who had a Hall of Famer on his team, John Stockton. Right? Just like I don't need to hear from the Kendrick Perkinses of the world as to why Karl Malone beat Jordan, I certainly don't need to hear from Kendrick Perkins as to why any center, nothing personal on Joel Embiid, any center could be deemed better than Joker. So just to understand what's going on here. Normally I would say, hey, there's going to be a little bit of an emotional letdown. If it were some team, the Warriors or, the Lakers, some team with a lot of rings, you would say, maybe they might come out a little flat game 2. Not this team. Right? I mean, all Denver has to do, quite frankly, is to look at Joker and realize he's not even all NBA. First team. And they're going to say, no, this isn't right. They're dissing us. It's up against the world. Right? Understand, Denver's ready for this series. You saw that with how they shut down Caleb Martin. Compare his shooting percentage in Game 1 to his shooting percentage in the Boston series. Right? So, I feel naked here. Right? I only have one team in the finals, Denver. The team I was hoping they'd play against, Boston, crashed and imploded. Right? Came out flat in Game 7. I don't want to hear about Tatum's ankle injury. The rest of the team should have picked up. Right? Let's just say Boston imploded. So I feel naked here. But I will say, I am expecting Denver, a juggernaut at home, to win Game 2. That's how I see it. Game 3, that's a little iffy. Right? That's a little iffy. Because when you have an 8th seed that reaches the heights that Miami has. When you have an 8th seed that has watched the 2 seed win 3 games in a row, especially a very deflating end to Game 6, and they come out on the road in Game 7 and have the first half this Miami team did, right, with the Hall of Fame coach, I'm expecting Miami to rise up sometime in this series. I just don't think it happens here. I like Denver in Game 2. The line's a bit rich. I personally, just for philosophical reasons, have a hard time going above 7 in betting a point spread in an NBA game, especially when it's 2 high-character teams, especially when Miami was recently in the NBA Finals in the bubble against the Lakers, right? You might recall Jimmy Butler putting up a triple-double in that NBA Finals. He's still on the Heat, right? 2 high-character teams, I'm hesitant to go above 7, but I am taking Denver on the alternative line of 6.5 for Game 2. That's how I see it. Let me say this too. We focus on Joker, we focus on Jamal Murray. Right? It's underreported, but understand, Michael Porter was dominant the short time he was in college. He hurt his back. He had nerve damage. He has a dropped foot. He's a bit of a medical anomaly. Right now, in Game 1, look at the box score. He was terrible from the field and shooting. But this is that rare third wheel in the NBA who on some nights can carry a team. Folks, he was the man getting the boards in Game 1. Right? Just understand, the way Denver is put together is brilliant. Right? Porter is a superstar. He has some physical challenges that stops him from time to time. But you shouldn't view him as below Joker and Jamal Murray. Right? Because Porter can take over the game. Right? The closest analogy I could come to is, let's say, Klay Thompson when he was playing with KD and Steph Curry. Right? You understood. As good as KD and Steph Curry were, or should I say, since we're talking Golden State basketball, Steph Curry and KD. As good as they were, you understood there were some nights where they could take a back seat to Klay Thompson. Folks, Michael Porter made his presence felt in Game 1. Right now, certainly Joker, triple-double. If the series ends now, he's the MVP. Right? But don't sleep on the team that Denver has put together. Aaron Gordon is one of the best defenders in the league. Right? Guys like Caleb Martin are not going to slip under radar here. This Denver team is put together in such a way that I doubt that this season is a one-off. And they're a tight team. Contavious Caldwell-Pope, right, hits threes. I mean, understand, Denver, forget the box score for Game 1. Denver is a lethal three-point shooting team. It just didn't come together for them in Game 1. There's going to be a game here, folks, where Denver hits over 40% of their threes. Offensively, they're a juggernaut. Joker, Murray, Porter, they're all in their 20s. I like Denver in Game 2. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this video. Let me add to. The Miami side of the ledger is going to say, come on, Dow. We've all watched the NBA long enough to know that something is inherently wrong with the team only getting 2 free throw attempts in a 48-minute game, especially with all the guys who cut to the basket on the Heat, including Jimmy Butler. right? If Miami just gets to the line 15 times, their plight would be different, right? Let's see what happens in game 2. I'm expecting an offensive explosion from the Denver Nuggets. I also like the over in the game. That's how I see it. I look forward to your comments. Thanks for stopping by.